Hey, welcome back to another episode of Frank's World TV. Did you ever wonder what happens at a government-specific IT conference? Well, this week, we're going to check that out. Hello, and welcome back to Frank's World TV. I'm your host, Frank Lavinia. Earlier this week, I was at a conference called the PA ITC, which stands for the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Technology Conference. It was a conference basically specifically for various CIOs and technologists who work for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it was a great example of what a typical IT conference for public sector officials looks like. And as luck would have it, I took some video. So let's have a look at it now.
So Windows To Go allows you to run an entire desktop on a USB key.
Oh, cool.
So we booted this laptop, which is running. It's actually running on this USB key. So if you have cases where you want to have people, maybe contractors or temporary or people in the field,
right,
they can carry this key around. They can put it in any computer that they use and boot right off that. It'll store all their information for you. So
wow,
it's a feature with Windows 8. Just another thing to take a look at.
That is neat.
Yeah.
Is what we call a cow, cell on wheels, or sometimes a colt, cell on light truck, depending on who you're talking to. There's different terminology. And this is used not only in a disaster situation, but if we need additional capacity for a major event.
So I've heard of scenarios where there would be a big conference in town or something like that, and they bring in the hurricane trucks. Is this...
Frequently, we may deploy additional capacity at events like NASCAR races, 4th of July parades.
Okay.
Things along that nature where there's something extremely out of the ordinary coming to town.
Okay. So you don't overwhelm the local network.
Correct.
And
we
in
want to provide coverage for our customers as well. Totally self-contained. This is a regular cell site like we would have at any one of our towers, but it's mobile.
Oh, very nice.
It's its own generator, its own towers.
Nice. And you said that you were here on two fronts. So what's the other bus over there?
The bus is here from Verizon, and that is focused on satellite communications.
Oh, very nice.
Which is a product we offer. David Hyde is the representative on the bus, and you can probably answer any questions about that.
Great.
Much better than I can.
Well, thank you.
This is a power distribution block, VHF radio.
Yep.
Open Sky Network radio.
Yep.
And then on the far right
Yep.
is a digital video recorder.
Okay. Yep.
Directly behind that is a gigabit switch for communications for the DVR system up to the front of the car. Directly, you can't see it on the left edge, right next to the DVR, is a wireless transceiver.
Okay.
So that video can upload. Directly next to that, the little yellow device right here is what they call a charge guard. So after he shuts the engine off, things will run for a period of time, not kill the battery. And then basically just fuses and power distribution.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much, officer.
That's what I'm getting ready to do.
So then what if you could develop an API-based platform, integrate those technologies on the back end, but at the same time preserve the user interface? So as technology evolves, as MDM technology evolves, nothing has to change from a user experience perspective. But then here's the other element where I see there's a lot of deep consideration, and that is how do you continue to drive consistent policy? So what does my administrator portal look like? And does it have to change if I have different technologies from different vendors? So our broad approach has been, it doesn't have to change. If you have an API-based platform that's middleware-based, horizontal in nature, your administration and policy user interface can remain the same. Right? So now, what does that mean? It means I have an OpEx model that I'm going to pay as I use, it's license-based, and I future-proof my investment. So going back to kind of the strategy discussion, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years, right? Some of those elements may be, there's an unknown next to that. But can you future-proof an investment through a cloud-based platform that integrates some of these other technologies as technology evolves?
Sector, not unlike public sector, in that you've got really kind of 2 distinct components of mobile opportunities. One is enabling your workforce, so internal, and the other is your citizen or customer base. And that's not nearly as controllable, obviously. So, you know, your mobile strategy should certainly take that into account. And you know, there's a lot of things you can do to mobile friendly your websites that are citizen facing, that then enable them to have more interaction with their government in a mobile way without having to make a decision on a platform or a device. Then you kind of contrast that with when you are going to make an investment in a device for your workforce. Obviously, you need to get to a standardized decision there in order to maximize your investment and minimize the amount of administration you'll need to support managing those devices. And then that also obviously plays into where you're investing in creating apps for those devices and what platform you're on there. I don't think there's a magic bullet answer to this one. This one's, you know, as my colleagues have said, this one's kind of evolving, and we're watching it evolve. But certainly, government is not in a different position on trying to make those decisions than private sector, and what we're seeing private sector doing is that for your workforce, you need to make a standardized decision and then go with it.
Yeah, it was to be a need to recognize that it appeared that if you solve the BYOD problem and you figure out how to manage mobile devices and you come up with a great mobile app that meets some very good specific need, you've gone a long way to solving the problem. And you've really just touched the tip of the iceberg because mobility is having such a profound effect. So can you talk a little bit, Dave, about how that's how that really manifests itself in your situation? Because I mean, we start getting into different circumstances that you don't solve with any of the things we've discussed, because you know there really isn't a clean answer, and it requires an iterative approach. Can you talk about your experience?
I couldn't agree more. You can get your feet wet in mobile apps development very inexpensively. Apple developer license or organizational, I think it costs $299. Private citizen could go buy one for $99. You need a Mac and a couple of iPhones and away you go. And that's very deceptive. And I must admit, over the last couple of years, we've had some folks inside Unisys that have decided they were going to go off and develop this, that, or the other. And at some point, you run into the fact that every useful application has a back end. And that back end has probably got to belong in a secure data center environment of some sort. Now, it could be a cloud environment, it could be a private cloud, it could be a traditional data center, but everything has a back end. And that's where the complexity of doing a lot of this mobile application development comes in. And that's where you can't have 2 college students with a couple of Macs and an iPhone writing your corporate applications, because you need an architect and you need some network people who can set up the environment to securely attach and do something relevant with that back end. And then if I could comment a little bit on mobile device management, favorite topic of mine, since we've had this a BYO program now for some time. It's become clear, as I said before, that BYO is just a ticking time bomb waiting to blow up in people's faces. And I think the eventual answer to that particular problem is not going to be mobile device management, which I believe sprang from the PC paradigm, where we were running Microsoft SCCM or various other packages that manage PCs as a device. And those PCs were owned by the organization, and there was no ambiguity as to who controlled it or who owned it. Now we have these mobile devices in a BYO environment, and there is ambiguity about who owns. There may be no ambiguity about who owns the device, but there's a mishmash of data on it.
I'm Mike Gressler from Microsoft, and you're now watching Frank's World TV.
So that was an interesting video. One of the things that really, in my mind, differentiates a public sector conference from kind of more of a private sector focused type of event for IT is the toys are bigger. We saw the Verizon truck, both the cow as well as the emergency satellite communications truck, as well as the police cruiser, and some of the technology that goes into basically making people's lives safer every day, or preparing for a major crisis or a major disaster, the likes of which we've seen quite a bit, from 9/11 all the way up to Hurricane Sandy. And who knows what will happen next, but it's good to know that there's a hardcore team of dedicated professionals, not just the actual rescue workers, but the persons who actually support the IT. And it's an interesting field to be in. It's an interesting field to take a look at. You also saw in the panel discussion that public sector developers have many of the same, well, challenges and problems that they face those in the private sector. So it's an interesting place. It's an interesting conversation to have. Looking forward to covering FOSSI, which is coming up in just a few weeks. And until next week, I will see you on YouTube. If not, at Pentagon City at my office hours. Thanks a lot. Have a good week.